Hello, this is Jane, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the April 9 issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And I'm going to start on the front page, and the major headline here reads, Major Surprise. Tory defection puts Liberals in majority territory ahead of key by-elections. And this is by Alex Ballingall and Ryan Tumilty. Ottawa. The majority government Liberals hoped for in the last federal election is finally within their grasp. The party technically crossed that threshold Wednesday with the defection of a former Conservative leadership candidate to the government benches, a stunning floor crossing that surprised partisans on all sides, revealed fresh concerns within the Conservative caucus about Tory leader Pierre Poilievre, and set the stage for Prime Minister Mark Carney to stay in power for at least 3 more years. Now, because of the 5 floor crossings from the opposition Conservatives and the NDP, the governing Liberals have the thinnest possible majority with 171 seats and 3 vacancies in the 343-seat House of Commons. And since all 3 of those ridings are holding by-elections Monday, including 2 in Toronto that are widely considered locks for the Liberals, it is all but certain the government will move forward with a majority, ending a streak of minority parliaments that has persisted since 2019. Speaking outside his office on Wednesday, just before sitting down with his newest MP, Southwestern Ontario's Marilyn Gladu, Carney avoided any direct reference to the milestone. Instead, he stressed his desire for unity in Parliament and across the country as Canada faces a sea of troubles, from war and price surges on the world stage to domestic efforts to bolster the military and economic independence in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade tariffs. What's important is that we command the confidence of the House, that we have the ambition of the country, that we put in front of the House of Commons the legislation that's needed to protect Canadians, to empower Canadians, and to build this country, Carney said. Yet some Liberals said Wednesday the defection of a 4th Conservative MP to their ranks since November, New Democrat MP Lori Idlout also joined the Liberals by crossing the floor last month, raised questions on the progressive side of the governing party. The defection also surprised some Liberals and Conservatives who told the Star on Wednesday that Gladu was nowhere near their radar screens amidst rampant speculation about opposition defections to government. As a Conservative who has won her seat by solid margins in 4 general elections since 2015, Gladu initially opposed Liberal legislation to ban conversion therapy, a credited form of counseling meant to change the sexual orientation and gender identity of LGBTQ people, arguing it was overly broad. During a failed Conservative leadership run in 2020, she promised to allow party members to advance anti-abortion efforts. Gladu also opposed vaccine mandates during the COVID-19 pandemic and accused the government of violating the rights of protesters who occupied Ottawa during the controversial Freedom Convoy demonstrations in 2022. One veteran Liberal MP said Gladu is a thoughtful person, but was concerned that she is a social conservative joining a party that has had clear boundaries on some policies, such as the ban on anti-abortion MPs when Justin Trudeau was Liberal leader. We've also had a very clear stance on some social issues over the last 10 years that were red lines for us, like a woman's right to choose, like LGBT rights, said the MP who spoke on condition of anonymity. The opposition NDP took a shot at Carney over Gladew's floor crossing, accusing the Prime Minister of sacrificing long-held liberal positions on fundamental rights in pursuit of a majority government. Yet, in attracting opposition politicians into the Carney liberal fold, the government has drawn from both sides of the political spectrum. Last month, Idlout, who was elected in 2021 and 2025 as the NDP MP for Nunavut, crossed the floor to join the Liberals. An Ontario New Democrat, former Deputy Leader Dolly Begum, is running for the Carney Liberals in Monday's by-election in the Toronto riding of Scarborough Southwest. And Danielle Martin, a doctor running for the Liberals in Toronto's University Rosedale, on Monday backed American Senator Bernie Sanders, an avowed Democratic Socialist, in his push for public health care in the United States. Speaking to reporters after Carney's meeting with Gladue, Artificial Intelligence Minister Evan Solomon said he had several pragmatic conversations with the Sarnia Lapton Bikawagan MP and said the Liberals should welcome people with different views as they try to bring Canadians together behind Carney's agenda. We are interested in unity, not uniformity, Solomon said. Stephen McKinnon, the Liberal House Leader, told the Star the most important consideration for the government is to include various perspectives inside the governing coalition as Canada faces large external threats. Conservatives, meanwhile, accuse the Liberals of striving for a majority through backroom deals, the same line the party used when three of its other MPs crossed the floor. Nova Scotia's Chris d'Entremont, Markham Unionville's Michael Ma, and Edmonton's Matt Genereux. In a post on social media, Poilievre pointed to Gladew's recent statements that MPs who cross the floor should resign their seats to force a by-election if they want to switch parties. The people in her community voted for our conservative vision of a Canada that is affordable, safe, and strong at home, not for the costly Liberal government she has now joined, said Poilievre, calling on Gladue to resign her seat. In last April's federal election, the Liberals under Carney won a minority mandate, despite sources inside the party predicting on election night they could clinch a majority. As a Conservative candidate, Gladue won more than 53% of the vote. And the next article I will read is just above that one, and it's titled, Tories Fear Poilievre Will Cost Them. Dozens of MPs concerned they'll lose seats if they go into election under leader, insiders say. And this is by Tanda McCharles, Reza Patel, and Alex Ballingall. Ottawa. Up to 40 Conservative MPs are worried they could lose their seats if Pierre Poilievre leads the party into the next election against Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney. Two federal Conservative sources said after the party lost a fourth MP on Wednesday. Dissatisfaction and worries about their future under Poilievre's leadership have many questioning whether or not a bolder move to spark change is required, with some MPs discussing whether to invoke caucus powers to force Poilievre out, said one of the sources. Several other federal Conservative caucuses said they were not aware of any discussions about using powers MPs have under the Reform Act. That law says if 20% of a caucus or 28 of Poiliev's current 140-member caucus, sign a letter, it would force a secret caucus ballot that could oust a sitting leader. But a second source confirmed the first source's estimation that more than 36 MPs fear they cannot win re-election under Poilievre. That's real, said the second source, who, like most interviewed for this story, declined to be identified in order to speak freely about caucus tensions. People are looking at the polls and they're saying, you know what? I'm not going to win. This guy isn't able to change it around, and he's not making the changes around him, said the second source. It's just a matter of self-survival. Pierre's got to go, said the first source. Whether or not any MPs actually make a move against Poilievre is unclear. Several MPs said at the least there will be a tough questions asked at the next Wednesday's caucus meeting. But what many observed is that the Conservatives are in a rut. A senior Liberal source who spoke on condition of anonymity said conversations are ongoing with 8 Conservative MPs about possibly crossing the floor. The Liberal declined to name them, but said they believed 2 or 3 of the conversations are advanced to the point where further defections could come during the Montreal Convention. Conservative MP Mike Dawson, one of 3 MPs who told the Star they support Poilievre, said the floor crossers' defections say more about political opportunism than anything about the leader. If there's any more that want to go, I wish they'd just go and be done with it. Ontario Conservative MPs are particularly worried about their chances of re-election, said a third source, a Tory MP, and they are closely tracking riding-level polling data online. That source questioned whether Poilievre would survive. With so many worrying that they may lose their seat, he may not even get a shot at another election. A fourth conservative insider said it was up to Poilievre to reverse the political slide. Sarnia Lambton Bajwayang, MP Marilyn Gladu, stunned her caucus colleagues by crossing to the government benches Wednesday. She is the 4th Conservative and 5th MP overall to defect to the Carney government, crossing one day before Liberals gather in Montreal for a policy convention. It is such a shock, said a 5th Conservative who said Gladu endorsed Poilievre for leader early on. A vocal critic of vaccine mandates, she was Poilievre's civil liberties shadow minister. Her defection is frustrating, said the MP, because it feeds a narrative that MPs can only do good things for their riding or their country if they join the government. That's not true, number one, and it shouldn't be. Gladu's defection was all the more surprising because she is seen by her colleagues, in the words of one, not as a center conservative, but more of a right-wing conservative. Still, some of Poilievre's internal critics say they would never follow Gladu, preferring to ride out Poilievre's tenure and aim to rebuild the party. Poilievre reacted to Gladu's exit via a statement on X criticizing Carney for what he calls an undemocratic power play. Mark Carney seizing a costly Liberal majority that voters denied him and doing so through backroom deals, the leader said, citing Gladu's own words in January that floor crossers should face voters in a by-election to give voters the final say. I could not agree more. She should do so. Flanking Carney at a photo opportunity, Gladu did not directly criticize Poilievre but offered praise for the Prime Minister. We need a serious leader who can address the uncertainty that has arrived due to the unjustified American tariffs. We need a global leader with a plan to make a more resilient Canada a stronger Canada, more self-reliant Canada for this critical moment, and that man is our Prime Minister, Mark Carney. The question now is whether Poilievre can keep his grip on a restive caucus, despite his winning more than 87% support of party members in a leadership review 2 months ago. And I need to pause here to remind you that you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And now I'm going back to the front page, and the next article is titled, City Looks to Ease Rules for Sidewalk Vendors. Changes would lift moratorium on new food trucks, let buskers sell music. And this is by Modis Habibinia. In the latest bid to liven up Toronto sidewalks, the city is being urged to end a more than 2-decade moratorium on new food trucks, street vendors, and even buskers selling music. A city staff report has recommended a slew of changes to modernize Toronto's rules on permits for street vendors and street artists. Proposed changes include allowing new sidewalk vendors in the downtown core, extending service hours for food trucks, and loosening restrictions around buskers' street performances. The report goes to Council's Economic and Community Development Committee Thursday. In a city as large and vibrant as Toronto, investing in a strong local economy supports a high quality of life for residents, the report says. Street vendors and artists contribute to these efforts by adding to the vibrancy of the public realm, strengthening community relationships, and offering the public opportunities to conveniently access food, goods, and art. The recommendations are meant to address findings from a 2025 review ordered by Council to change outdated bylaws that bog down culture and creativity on Toronto's streets and sidewalks. In 2002, Council put in place a moratorium to restrict sidewalk vending, that's food, non-alcoholic drinks, and other goods from a cart or workstation at a fixed designated public sidewalk in what are now today's wards of Spadina, Fort York, University Rosedale, and Toronto Centre. At the time, according to the city report, there were 134 vendors, a number that has dropped to 47. An online public survey last year referenced in the report found that a majority of residents feel there should be more, with 70% of respondents disagreeing with the statement, quote, there are enough street or sidewalk vendors in Toronto, end quote. Under the proposed rule changes, staff recommend removing the 2014 restriction that prevented street vendors from selling anything but food and allow businesses to apply for permits to sell items such as crafts, jewelry, and flowers as well by March 2027. If approved, buskers and sidewalk artists with permits would, for the first time, also be allowed to play amplified sound and to sell their music on CDs, vinyl records, or cassettes without a permit. The report also proposes loosening some of the rules for food vendors, including lifting the 2002 moratorium on new permits in the downtown wards. It also recommends, by June, increasing the time food trucks can park on a city block from the current 5 hours to 12 hours, allowing vendors to serve both daytime and nighttime crowds without needing to relocate. To help reduce financial barriers, staff suggests lowering most permit fees for sidewalk and mobile vending by about 30% next year. They also suggest reducing fees specifically for fresh and vegetable vendors to improve access to affordable produce. The fee reductions are expected to cost the city $75,000 to $120,000 in foregone revenue each year. But staff said the new relaxed rules would attract more vendors, which would offset the fee cost. Toronto has a long history of trying to loosen regulations around street food vendors. In 2010, a program called Toronto a la carte came with so much red tape that councilors at the time said it ruined a good plan to allow a greater variety of street food. Council ended up killing the program in 2011. A couple of years later, to move past the hot dog only era, the city launched a pilot project allowing select food trucks to roam some parks. It led to the broader 2014 overhaul of city food vending bylaws, but those rules dictated that the trucks could operate only on city streets and prevented street vendors from selling non-food items. Many trucks from the pilot eventually shuttered or pivoted to private catering and festivals due to the city's high permit fees. A major point of contention at the time was that the food trucks had to be at least 50 meters away from restaurants. The restaurant industry argued looser restrictions would cripple nearby businesses, but in a dense city like Toronto, finding legal curb spaces within that restriction proved nearly impossible. In 2015, Council reduced that distance to 30 meters and allowed people to hold multiple food truck licenses. Under the proposed rule changes, vendors will have to remain at least 25 meters away from established restaurants. And the next article is also from the front page under the byline of Iran War. The title is Attacks Threaten Fragile Ceasefire. Tehran closes strait as Israel ramps up strikes on Lebanon. And this is by Bassem Marul, John Gambrell, Sami Magdi, and Sam Metz. Tehran, Iran. A ceasefire deal to pause the war in Iran appeared to hang by a thread Wednesday after the Islamic Republic closed the Strait of Hormuz again in response to Israeli attacks in Lebanon. The White House demanded that the channel be reopened and sought to keep peace talks on track. The U.S. and Iran both claimed victory after reaching the agreement, and world leaders expressed relief, even as more drones and missiles hit Iran and Gulf Arab countries. At the same time, Israel intensified its attacks on the Hezbollah militant group in Lebanon, hitting commercial and residential areas in Beirut. At least 182 people were killed Wednesday in the deadliest day of fighting there. The fresh violence threatened to scuttle what U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance called a fragile deal. The Iranian parliament speaker said planned talks were unreasonable because Washington broke 3 of Tehran's 10 conditions for an end to the fighting. In a social media post, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf objected to Israeli attacks on Hezbollah, an alleged drone incursion into Iranian airspace after the ceasefire took effect, and U.S. refusal to accept any Iranian enrichment capabilities in a final agreement. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi insisted that an end to the war in Lebanon was part of the ceasefire deal, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Donald Trump said the truce did not cover Lebanon. When the deal was announced, Pakistan's Prime Minister, whose country served as a mediator, said in a social media post that it applied to everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere. The world sees the massacres in Lebanon, Aragshi said in a post on X. The ball is in the U.S. court, and the world is watching whether it will act on its commitments. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, reported in Iranian state media, was completely unacceptable. She repeated Trump's expectation and demand that the channel be reopened. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said American and Israeli forces had achieved a capital V military victory, and the Iranian military no longer posed a significant threat to U.S. forces or the region. The Iranian military said the country forced Israel and the U.S. to accept its proposed conditions and surrender. Much about the agreement was unclear, as the sides presented vastly different visions of the terms. Iran said the deal would allow it to formalize its new practice of charging ships passing through the strait, a crucial transit lane for oil. The White House said Trump is opposed to tolls for ship passage through the strait. Only 11 vessels moved through the strait Wednesday, roughly the same as in prior days, according to Windward, a maritime intelligence firm. Iran was requiring shippers to pay tolls of up to $1 in US dollars a barrel for outbound oil, it said. The largest supertankers carry up to 3 million barrels of crude. The fate of Iran's missile and nuclear programs, the elimination of which were major objectives for the U.S. and Israel in going to war, also remained unclear. Trump said the U.S. would work with Iran to remove buried enriched uranium, though Iran did not confirm that. Trump initially said Iran proposed a workable plan that could help end the war that the U.S. and Israel launched on February 28. But when a version in Farsi emerged indicating Iran would be allowed to continue enriching uranium, key to building a nuclear weapon, Trump called it fraudulent. The White House said Vance would lead American negotiators at upcoming peace talks, which could begin in Pakistan as soon as Friday. Iran's demands for ending the war include a withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region, the lifting of sanctions, and the release of its frozen assets. Meanwhile, Israeli Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir said Israel will continue to utilize every operational opportunity to strike Hezbollah. Arab League Chief Ahmed Abul Get accused Israel of persistently seeking to sabotage the ceasefire deal. Hezbollah has not confirmed whether it will abide by the ceasefire, though the group has said it was open to giving mediators a chance to secure an agreement. An official, speaking on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to comment publicly, said the group would not stop firing at Israel unless Israel agreed to do the same. The fleeting sense of relief among Lebanese after the ceasefire announcement turned into panic, with what Israel's military called its largest coordinated strike in the current war, saying it had hit more than 100 Hezbollah targets within 10 minutes in Beirut, southern Lebanon, and the eastern Bekaa Valley. Black smoke towered over several parts of the seaside capital, where a huge number of people displaced by war have taken shelter. Explosions interrupted the honking of traffic on what had been a bustling blue sky afternoon. Ambulances raced toward open flames. Apartment buildings were struck. Associated Press journalists saw charred bodies in vehicles and on the ground at one of Beirut's busiest intersections in the Corniche El Masra neighborhood, a mixed commercial and residential area. Central Beirut has been targeted before, but not by so many strikes at once and in the middle of the day. Israel had rarely struck central Beirut since the outbreak of the latest Israel-Hezbollah war on March 2nd, but has regularly struck southern and eastern Lebanon and Beirut's southern suburbs. Lebanon's Minister of Social Affairs, Hanid Sayed, condemned Israel's wide range of strikes, calling it a very dangerous turning point. Shortly after the ceasefire announcement, Bahrain, Israel, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates all issued warnings about incoming missiles from Iran. The fire stopped for a time, then hostilities appeared to restart. An oil refinery on Iran's Lavan Island came under attack, according to Iranian state radio. A short time later, the United Arab Emirates air defenses fired at an incoming Iranian missile barrage. And I need to pause once more to remind you that you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article is titled, Canadians Are So Proud of You. Astronaut Hansen speaks with PM about humanity, teamwork, and his favorite wake-up song. And there is a big photo there showing astronaut Jeremy Hansen in outer space holding the Canadian flag. And in the inset is a picture of him speaking to the PM, and the article is written by Manuela Vega. Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen spoke about his perspective on humanity, teamwork, and his favorite song to wake up to during a call with Prime Minister Mark Carney on Wednesday night. Hansen also talked with Industry Minister Melanie Joly and observers during the approximately 20-minute call to the crew of Artemis II. The conversation, organized by the Canadian Space Agency, took place on the 8th day of the 10-day mission. It followed the crew's historic lunar flyby on Monday that set the record for the farthest distance traveled from Earth since Apollo 13 in 1970. Canadians are so proud of what you're doing and the collaboration, Carney said on the call. He later praised the astronauts for setting an example on how to reach literally for the stars and the moon, while setting a platform for the world to go even farther. The Artemis program is meant to test how the spacecraft systems operate in deep space in pursuit of landing near the moon's south pole and in 2 years, and future missions to Mars. According to the U.S. agency, it's part of a national goal to maintain U.S. superiority in exploration and discovery. This mission makes Canada the second country in the world to send a citizen into deep space. Speaking from the Orion spacecraft, Hansen answered in French that he is proud of Canada and that the country is proud of Carney. Answering Carney's questions, Hansen added that his favorite wake-up song is Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. Responding to Carney's question about why he had said that the mission was a risk for a good reason, Hansen said risk is necessary, but that it should be calculated, well thought out, and balanced with others. Carney added that Canadians are proud of the collaboration with the United States and extended an invitation to Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, pilot and mission specialist Christina Cook to visit Canada. Joly followed up to ask if Hansen's view on humankind has changed throughout the mission. It hasn't changed my perspective at all, Hansen answered. My perspective on humanity and our place on planet Earth has not changed because I launched with a perspective that I think there is enough for all. The purpose of humanity is joy and lifting one another up, creating together versus destroying, he said. One observer from Mississauga asked Hansen if there was anything he learned from elders of the Turtle Lodge that made an impact on his journey into space. Hansen answered that he has spent time with many indigenous elders, and he recommends people listen intently to their elders' advice. He added that he turns to his mission patch created by an Anishinaabe artist, Henry Wimond, and I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. My mantra when I wake up is I am just going to try to spend my day walking with these attributes, he said. And so I start with courage, humility, respect, love, honesty, wisdom, and truth. His crewmates and an instructor, they went on a backpacking expedition which taught him about being in integrity, he said. As humans, you are not always in integrity, Hansen said. Sometimes you are in your integrity and sometimes you fall short, but you should strive to be in integrity. And so for me, being in integrity is walking in accordance with these 7 sacred laws, and it's just something that helps me to guide me through life. Another observer, a student, asked how Hansen believed missions like Artemis will change the way humans live on Earth in the next 20 to 30 years, as issues like artificial intelligence, robots, and climate change become greater issues. Hansen answered that humans are pushing the boundaries of innovation, but it should be used for good. We can leverage it for our advantages. We can also use it to do harm, he said. And so we just have to strive to keep pushing innovation in ways that helps us collectively live better together. Hansen added that space exploration sets big and difficult goals. If you think this is neat, it's going to get really exciting in the next number of years, he added. We plan to get back to the surface of the moon. We plan to create a permanent base there on the moon and eventually get to Mars. But what is awesome about when we set these goals is it puts a focus point on actually getting it done. It's easy to dream about things and create innovations, but when you are going to bet your life on something and go out and do it, it really helps bring that innovation cycle all the way around, from original thought to scientific understanding to actual development and testing to actually doing. The crew is set to end its mission by splashing down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California on Friday. And the next article is titled, Tens of Thousands of Kids Have Had Parent in Jail, Data Reveals. Researchers studying statistics from 5 provinces urge more supports for youth. And this is by Daisha Lopi. About 170,000 Canadian children had a parent in jail over a 6-year span, a new study shows. The estimate comes from a first-of-its-kind study published Wednesday in the journal PLOS One. It tracked data from 5 provinces between 2015 and 2021 and found that thousands of children experienced a parent going to jail, some more than once. Until now, available data didn't capture how many children were affected by having a jailed parent or how it shapes their lives. A gap researchers say has made it difficult to design effective supports and services. We need to identify these children. We need to care about these children. And we need to dedicate resources to these children, said Martha Painter. The first step is to acknowledge that they exist. Painter is an associate professor in the Faculty of Nursing and Health Sciences at the University of New Brunswick. She's also a principal researcher of the study alongside collaborators at universities and community organizations across Canada. It looked at 5 provinces: Alberta, British Columbia, Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Saskatchewan, and found that for every 10,000 people, 229 children had a parent in jail. That's a higher rate than the European Union, but lower than the U.S. The study used data from the Canadian Correctional Services Survey, a Statistics Canada data set covering 249,440 people in federal and provincial custody. Researchers identified children using birth certificates, child tax benefits, and hospital birth records for mothers in custody. They then calculated how many children under 18 had a parent in jail. Among affected children, 30.5% had an Indigenous parent in jail, and about 6% had a Black parent. Indigenous and Black people make up much smaller shares of Canada's overall population. Previous research in Canada and the U.S. shows that families where a parent is in jail often face overlapping challenges, including violence at home, substance use, homelessness, and poverty. Children with a parent in jail are at increased risks for emotional, psychological, behavioral, and school-related challenges. Parental incarceration is not only a criminal justice concern, it constitutes a fundamental violation of children's rights, said Christine Bentley Wang, study co-author and assistant professor with McMaster University's Department of Pediatrics. Researchers and organizers have been saying this for years. In 2021, kids with incarcerated parents presented a policy brief to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights, arguing that children with incarcerated parents should be recognized as victims under the Canadian Victims' Bill of Rights. In 2022, the United Nations Committee on Rights of the Child called for Canada to improve data collection to enable monitoring of child rights, particularly for children in vulnerable situations. Bentley Wang says this latest study is in direct response to the call. It is something that we should be preventing, said Painter, because we should be preventing harm to children. That should be one of our greatest priorities as a society. The authors stress that future research should focus on building more complete, up-to-date national data that includes all provinces, territories, and federal prisons. The authors also call for more research on the inequities faced by Indigenous and Black children, including approaches led and governed by Indigenous communities. And before I read this next article, I just want to remind you again that you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And this next article is titled, Man Arrested After Restaurant Shooting. Police Investigating Whether Hate Was Factor in Attack. And this article is by Jennifer Pagliaro and Alicia Wang. Toronto police are investigating whether a Brampton man's alleged targeting of a Jewish-owned restaurant was hate-motivated. Chief Myron Demkew announced Wednesday that a 30-year-old had been arrested and charged with shooting at Old Avenue Restaurant in North York on Friday during Passover. Multiple bullet holes were seen in the glass of the front entrance of the restaurant, but no injuries were reported, police said. The man's charges are all firearms related. He appeared in court on Wednesday without a lawyer and was held in custody pending a bail hearing. We don't want this kind of violence in Toronto, Demkiw said at a press conference at police headquarters. We will continue to hunt down whoever is responsible for this and other similar shootings in our city. The quick arrest 2 days after the shooting, just before 1:30 a.m., was, in part, credited to the service's recent move to beef up patrols in predominantly Jewish areas during Passover, as well as a new counterterrorism unit. Superintendent Ryan Ford of the Organized Crime Enforcement Unit said officers were already patrolling near the restaurant in the Avenue Road and Brook Avenue area when the shooting occurred and responded quickly to the scene. The hate crime unit, Demkiw said, also assisted, but the shooting has not been determined to be motivated by hate, with investigators saying they are early in the review of the incident. The restaurant's owner, a vocal activist against anti-Semitism, who requested not to be named due to safety concerns, spoke briefly with the Star by phone Saturday, saying she is grateful for the police response, crediting Demkiw. Maureen Lesham, a community advocate who has been speaking to the Star on behalf of the restaurant's owner, said Wednesday in a statement they are grateful to police for their swift and decisive action in making this arrest. It sends a clear message that acts of intimidation and hate will not be tolerated and will be treated with the seriousness they deserve, the statement said. The shooting is the latest in a series of similar incidents involving the Jewish community across the GTA, with 3 synagogues across the region hit with gunshots in March alone. And then right under that article is another one on the same thread. Ban admits planning attack on New York Jewish Center by Larry Neumeister. A Pakistani man who had been living in Canada pleaded guilty to a terrorism charge Wednesday, saying it was a morally reprehensible idea to support the Islamic State group by plotting to use automatic weapons to kill Jewish people at a Brooklyn center. Mohammed Shahzeb Khan, 21, said he answered the group's call for Muslims to kill Jewish people by plotting to attack the Jewish Center in October 2024. He entered the plea in Manhattan federal court more than 18 months after he was brought to the United States from Canada, where he was arrested on September 4, 2024, in or near Ormstown, Quebec, about 20 kilometers from the U.S. border. In a release, Assistant Attorney General for the National Security, John A. Eisenberg, said Khan planned a mass shooting to coincide with the anniversary of the October 7, 2023 Hamas attacks, with the explicit goal of killing as many Jews as possible. Eisenberg said Khan, also known as Shahzeb Jadun, had boasted that he would carry out the largest attack on U.S. soil since the September 11 attacks. Khan told Judge Paul G. Gardeff, as he pleaded guilty to a single charge of trying to commit acts of terrorism transcending national boundaries, that he was going to cross the border from Canada to the United States in September 2024 with the intention of killing Jewish people in Brooklyn. Khan said he was motivated to provide material support to the Islamic State group in retaliation for Israel's killing of Palestinians in Gaza. He said he now regrets his plan, which included renting a space next to the Jewish Center. I was not raised this way, Khan said, adding that what he planned to do was wrong. Khan said planning to kill Jewish people was a terrible, extremely dangerous, and morally reprehensible idea. Khan has been jailed since his arrest. He was granted a student visa in Canada in May 2023 and arrived in Toronto in June of that year. U.S. authorities have said he planned to use guns and knives to carry out an attack supporting the Islamic State group. Gardef set sentencing for August 12 when Khan would face up to life in prison. Authorities said Khan drew the detention of investigators after he began posting about his support for the Islamic State group in November of 2023. And the next article is titled FIFA Plans Cross Canada World Cup Festival Tour. Celebration events will hit 34 cities during tournament. And this is by Gemma Karsten Smith. Vancouver. Plans have been unveiled for festivities across Canada as the country prepares to co-host the FIFA World Cup this summer. FIFA released the route Wednesday for Canada Celebrates, a tour that will make 38 stops in 34 cities from Halifax to Whitehorse between June 1 and July 19. Vancouver and Toronto are among the 16 cities in Canada, the United States, and Mexico hosting games in the tournament. The plan has long been to include the entire country in the excitement, said Victor Montagliani, FIFA Vice President and CONCACAF President. The first stop will be in Mount Pearl, NL, on June 1, when Canada faces Uzbekistan in a friendly in Edmonton. And the final events will take place in Brampton and Niagara Falls, Ontario on July 19, when the championship game is held in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The tour will swing through every province and one territory, with FIFA saying it will bring FIFA World Cup energy within a 2-hour drive of more than 75% of Canadian residents. This really, I think, wraps up sort of a big hug, the diversity and the breadth and width of our country, because it will go close to coast to coast. Montagliani said, it's a sort of a festivity of football, where you can go watch the game on the big screen, you can go interact and have games that are going to be there for families, there'll be food, there'll be music. So it's a real festival of what football and the community really is. It's a real Canadiana feeling in the end. Plans for a cross-country celebration were included as part of Canada's bid to host World Cup games more than 8 years ago. Montagliani said, now he believes Canada Celebrates can be a legacy for other host nations. I think it's something we could give as Canadians to the World Cup moving forward, where it's a project that could be used in future World Cups, he said. There are less than 70 days to go before the tournament kicks off in Mexico City and Guadalajara on June 11. Canada will play its first game against Bosnia and Herzegovina in Toronto on June 12 before finishing out the group stage in Vancouver with a tilts against Qatar on June 18 and Switzerland on June 24. Toronto will host 6 games during the tournament, while Vancouver stages 7. World Cup excitement is starting to build, Montagliani said. He's seen people on the streets wearing World Cup gear and recently returned from Mexico City, where he took in the grand reopening of Estadio Azteca. The reality of having the tournament on home soil will only grow over the coming months, he added. I've been around the game my whole life and been around it internationally for 20 years. So these experiences I've had in other countries, he said, to have them in your own country is almost a bit of an out-of-body experience, because it's something you thought could never happen. But to know that the work that's been done by a lot of people in the last 20 years to get this country to be a World Cup country host, I think a lot of people should take pride in that. There's still work to be done getting both Toronto and Vancouver ready for the games. Construction continues at BC Place Stadium and BMO Field, which will be renamed Toronto Stadium during the tournament. Plans are being refined for fan events in both cities. Head coach Jesse Marsh continues to ready his team to play the tournament on home soil for the first time. The beauty about the World Cup, it's about a country, Montagliani said. And I know that this country has always risen to the occasion in terms of big events, and this is going to be no different. I have time for one more short article. I may not get through the whole thing, but quickly, this is under the byline Toronto. In GTA Briefs, City is giving away 1,000 AC units. Applications are open for the City of Toronto's Air Conditioner Assistance Program, which offers 1,000 free portable AC units to eligible people. The program was piloted last year with 500 units geared toward low-income seniors with health-related needs. It now offers 2 streams of eligibility, one for seniors and one for pregnant people or those taking care of infants. Eligible applicants will be selected randomly to receive a unit and will be emailed in May if selected. The AC units will begin being distributed by June and can fit in casement windows, slider windows, hung windows, and awning windows, according to the city's application page online. Interested residents can apply online, in person, via appointment at select community centers or over the phone. All applicants must live in an apartment building 3 or more stories tall in the city, lack access to an AC unit or in-suite cooling, and belong to a low-income household as calculated by Statistics Canada. And I will end here with, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the April 9 issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Jane. Thank you for listening.